All right. Welcome back, everybody, to conversation number 62. And we are welcoming back Els for another conversation. And today she's going to be talking to us about her favorite topic, user research, the good, the bad, and the ugly of said topic. If you don't know Els, and if you haven't heard her talk, you are in for a huge treat because Els is one of my favorite speakers. I first heard her talk, I think it was at a CXL Live several years ago. It was before the pandemic, and she was one of my favorite speakers that I got to hear at that conference. She just has a way with words, which you will see today if you haven't heard her before. But she has this way of, well, using words in a way that helps us fully understand the value of qualitative research and user research. She has been helping people optimize user experiences based on user research since 2001. She's an advocate for qualitative user research, really loves helping companies understand customers better because a happy customer is a returning customer. So, Els, I'm going to pass the screen share over to you. Take it away, Els.
All righty. Thank you very much, Kelly. Way too sweet. But yes, we did meet at a CXL Live a number of years ago. Not as long as I've been doing this, though. I've been doing user research and optimization for even longer, since 2001. So yeah, it's a while. Basically, what I like to say we do is we help people grow their business by treating their customers better, by putting their customer at the heart of everything, because everything starts with your customer. And this is why user research for me, it's basically my first love. And we're still together. You know, how special is that after 20 plus years? So today I want to talk to you about the good, the bad, and the ugly of user research. And I couldn't name a talk that without, you know, at least a nod to Clint and the font that is so epic. Let's start with part one of our trilogy, the good. User research, you know, since I started in it, has really come a long way. I used to fight a lot harder to be able to do user research. And so thank God that has changed. There's a lot more respect for user research. People understand its value. And so there's also more budgets. So people basically see the use of it, and especially qualitative user research, a lot more than quantitative in the past. People see the use of it much more than they used to. Now, you might be thinking, well, if this is all such great news and you're such a happy bunny, Els, you know, running a user research company, this added increase in interest for user research, why must you talk about bad stuff? Well, because it's not all good. The problem with user research today isn't with the quantity of user research being done, it's with the quality. I see a lot of research as well, because we have access to a lot of tools of our customers, and I stumble upon some pretty nasty stuff. And I don't blame people, because good user research is really hard. You know, it takes knowledge and it takes practice, it takes expertise. And bad user research is, well, I call it dangerous, and I like to compare it to mushrooms. Hear me out. I don't know if you ever go out foraging for mushrooms. As a matter of fact, I hope you don't, because foraging for mushrooms is dangerous. A good mushroom that you can, you know, tastily put onto your omelet and have a lovely, lovely brunch with looks pretty much exactly the same as the mushroom you will eat only the once, because it'll kill you. And that's the same with user research. If you don't know what you're looking for, most user research, especially qualitative user research, pretty much looks the same. You know, one survey to the untrained eye looks much like the other survey. One recording of a user test looks much like the other recording of a user test. But the problem is that's not really true. You have to actually look under the hood of the numbers, and you have to know exactly what you're looking for. Now, I don't know if anybody so far has had any alarm bells going off with me talking about user research and sharing some data about research. I'm gonna have a quick look at the chat on my phone. Anybody? No suspicions raised. You disappoint me a little, TLC community. I had expected you to be more hawk-eyed about this, because these numbers I shared, look at the source. Oh, I see Kelly going, oh, exactly. Oh, I mean, this is research done by a user research tool. Hello, of course, they're gonna say 65% of enterprise employees report an increase in demand for UX research. This helps their sales strategy. 70% of enterprise CEOs see UX and CX as a competitive differentiator. Of the CEOs using user research software, that is. But the thing is, this data is just out there. If you Google, you know, user research data, this, that, the other, this comes up. And if you don't bother looking for, you know, the source of this, yeah, you'd be basing yourself on wrong data. And now this is bigger research from, I don't want to say independent companies because they're not independent companies, but I see this actually happening internally as well. Numbers are shared, data is shared, and that data does not tell the whole story, or that data was gathered in a way that makes your information untrustworthy. I was, of course, kidding that you disappoint me, TLC community. You don't disappoint me. I completely skimmed over this in a hurry. But, you know, I just want to, and the problem is I've seen this on actual stages. I've been in a room and a number is shouted at from the stage, and I'm like, I think that's impossible. And I look it up and it is impossible. So you always have to be critical. Whatever anybody says, be super critical. I can't actually see the chat because I'm a little bit challenged. So Kelly, if you wanna, because I see you giggling.
That said, no, you can't take it back.
Damn it. Okay. All right. I'll try and make it up to you later. Anyway, so yeah, always be critical of any number you see and of anything anybody ever says. Trust no one, basically. So on a more positive note, let's dig a little deeper into how to get user research right. I've got 9 tips for today. I could talk about this basically forever. So of course there's lots more, but there's just 9 that I'd like to talk about today. And the first is to set up a research pipeline. What I see all too often is that research is done on a sort of ad hoc basis. A lot of companies, they only do research if they're like, oh my God, we have to solve this problem. And we'd preferably solve it by, you know, it's Friday, so that means it has to be solved by Thursday. Or, you know, at the latest, Monday. Like, no. And this is usually something where you think, really? This is actually a fundamental of your business. And for the fundamentals of your business, you should be doing research the whole time. You should basically have a think about what are my business, or if you're an agency, what are my clients' businesses' KPIs? Not what are they research KPIs, what are their business KPIs? What are their business KPIs? What are the strategic issues that this particular company deals with? And then have a think about, are there any recurring campaigns that they do? Maybe Mother's Day is important for this business. Maybe every year they have a wiper promo. We work for SafeLight. So you know when to do which type of research. And you plot that. You plot that on a timeline. You plot your campaigns, your seasonality, and whenever you don't have to do something seasonal, you can basically do your research for those strategic KPIs. And of course, plan backwards and be generous. October is not enough time to start thinking about Black Friday. I mean, why does it seem to come as a surprise every year for some companies? Be generous, plan backwards. And people often ask me, and I always get a lot of questions about tools. What tools do we use for this? Tool here, tool there. I'm not saying tools aren't important, but tools aren't important as you think. And the tool that is best for you is basically the tool that fits your organization, fits your maturity as an organization, fits your budget as an organization, and fits the way you work right now. If everything you do is in spreadsheets and in Google Sheets, maybe Google Sheet is a great way to do this. If you've got everything set up in Notion, go Notion. If you're a big company, you can afford a tool like Effective Experiments. Good on you. You know, that's great. But don't get hung up or stuck up on the tool. Do it, and then you can always fine tune whatever it is that you need to fine tune later. Just get started, do it the cheapest and easiest way possible for your organization. So once you've got your big research planning, it's also important to set clear research goals. And to sort of keep yourself honest and to also make sure that everybody is on board with what you're doing, it's great to just write this down. First, you write down, what are you trying to find out? What will this particular research that you're doing, this survey, this user testing, whatever it is, what will it tell you that you don't know already? And then, really important, why are you doing this? Once you know this, what are you going to do with this data? Because if it's just like, well, you know, if we know, we know. No. There has to be a plan for this. Why is it important for you to find this out? For example, we work for a company that sells coffee. We want to find out why customers with recurrent purchases of the same product don't set up a repeat order. You know, we see them ordering the same stuff again and again with a certain regularity. So why don't they set up the repeat order that this company offers? And why do we want to find this out? Well, because it's better business. Customers with repeat order setup, they order more often, they remain customers for longer, increasing customer lifetime value. So there's an important reason for us to want to find this out. So we can optimize for better revenue. Well, once you've written down your research question, what do you want to find out? Why do you want to find this out? You have to choose your right research method. And this is, again, I would say this is probably one of the hardest things. Because I get a lot of people coming to me and saying like, oh, Els, we want to do user testing with you. How much would it be to do user testing with like 20 people? And I'm like, no, this is great that you want to do this one. And let's take a step back. What is it that you actually want to find out? Because user testing might not be the right answer for you. Let's go over the list of questions, your research questions that you have to see what can user testing teach you and what maybe we should look to other methods to solve. Because you want to be as an agency, but also as an internal research person, you want to be upfront with the person who's coming to you with a research question. This method will give this to you, yes or no. Because everything starts from your research question. It's not like, yeah, but we want to do some user testing right now. I want to do user testing all the time, trust me, but it's not always the best thing to do. What I find a really great tool, I'm old school usability. So I am still often on the Nielsen Norman website, I know. And there's still some great stuff on there. And one of those things on there is this grid by Christian Rohrer. I've adapted it somewhat because I think it was made a while back, but I think most of it still holds true. I'm presenting a sort of condensed version of it, but if you Google Christian Rohrer user research NN group, you'll definitely get to the full picture. But this is a great way to think about your user research question. Think about what type of question you have. You know, are you trying to find out what people are doing or how many people are doing something? Then you're looking at a quantitative user research method. For example, if you want to know what links or what images are people clicking on my landing page, that's quantitative. How many people actually reach my call to action, which I've positioned 300 miles below the fold, that's a quantitative question. Why are people dropping off at step 3 of the funnel? No amount of looking at numbers will be able to tell you that. That is a qualitative question. And you also have to think about what is it that you're trying to find out about? Are you trying to find out something about people's behavior, something they're actually doing on your website, on your app, in the physical world with your device? Or are you trying to find out something about people's thoughts, people's feelings, what their feeling is towards your brand, how they think you position yourself in relation with your competitors? Also, these things basically dictate your user research method. So as I said, quantitative, what question, how many question. Analytics is usually a very good first place to look. Heat maps are a great way to look because that can very often give you a very quick view of, okay, how many people actually click my secondary call to action versus my primary call to action. A/B testing is a great way. I put it here, even though I prefer to look at A/B testing not as research, but as a way to validate your research, basically. But I put it here as a quantitative method. And if you want to know what people think, what people's attitudes are, this is typically where people place surveys. And when it comes to the traditional survey, like the email survey that we all know, then yes, I'd position it there because it is very far removed from anything that people are doing on your website or on your app. If you send somebody a survey via email, you are not in charge of when they see that survey or what they're doing when they're opening that survey. And they may have used your app or website yesterday. They may have used it 3 weeks ago. They may fill out this survey 2 minutes after they've seen it. You don't have context here. So a mail survey, I would put on the quantitative and the attitude part there. Now, I love quantitative, don't get me wrong. I mean, qualitative is my jam, but quantitative, much respect. And we need both. And again, not everything that we counted counts and not everything that counts can be counted. So qualitative is very important to get that full picture. If you want to know why people are doing something on your website, I'm still a huge fan of moderated usability testing. Sometimes you don't need it. Sometimes you can look at user session recordings and with common sense and the data from analytics go, oh, I see what they're doing. This is what they're doing. They're going back and forth. They're doubting between X and Y. Ah, yes. Sometimes only nonverbal can give you that behavior. Sometimes it cannot. And you have to go into moderated usability testing. You have to actually see people use it and be able to, and this is very important, at the right point, prompt them to give more explanation. Not ask them probing questions, but prompt them to explain what they're doing, basically. And that's where usability testing is really interesting. Behavior. If you want to find out about people's thoughts, their opinions, this is not user testing. User testing is not about thoughts or opinions. User testing is about behavior. If you want to find out about thoughts and opinions, you do an interview. Can you combine both in the same session? You absolutely can. But you have to know which question is what. You have to know that if you set a task, that when that person all of a sudden starts talking about opinions and about their opinion of the user interface, then you have to shut that down. Interview part usually is in the beginning. You can have a piece of conversation at the end where you can sort of mix these methods, but you have to know which research question you're trying to answer in each part of your session here. And now there are sessions that by nature sort of are more like in the middle between behavior and attitude. Not everything is black and white. So field studies where you really go to the place where people are actually using the thing, or go into people's homes when they're using their smart thermostat, etc. It's naturally a combination of both. So don't shy away from the mixture, but be very aware when you should have which hat on. I'm personally a huge fan of customer feedback and chat logs, and I would even say there, depending on how your chat is set up and what exactly you can gather from that, you can gather insights into attitude and into behavior. And yes, there's a quantitative aspect to that for sure to see what is a big problem, but there's also a qualitative aspect to that to see what are people actually saying. And you don't really need hundreds of people saying the same thing. If you can see a pattern in those answers, that already tells you quite a lot. And I would put surveys elsewhere as well, because, and I'm gonna go a little survey nuts here. Online surveys that you can target super specifically, they can capture something about behavior. If you know exactly when to show this, if you can show this to a person doing a certain thing at a right time, then absolutely it can tell you something about behavior. It all depends on what are you trying to find out, what type of survey should you use, what type of question should you use. Now, I've liberally dotted this thing with stars because yes, I do love surveys. And I know a lot of people hate surveys, but surveys are also possibly one of the scariest mushrooms around because it's really easy to get surveys wrong. So yeah, before you do your own surveys, I'm so happy that I don't know who you are. Please don't mute yourself because I can hear you laughing and I love it. But yeah, surveys are some of the most dangerous mushrooms around. So handle with care. Now, obviously, I said my main field of expertise is qualitative, but if you do research properly, it is never a good idea to just use data from one source. It is always a good idea to combine quantitative and qualitative research for maximum insights, obviously. I always get very wary of people just go, we saw this here, and I go like, yeah, but surely we've got something else here. We need to have something else to see whether we see the same patterns at least. Where is this data coming from? Is there corroborative evidence for this? And of course, you've set up your research pipeline, you have to ask the right research question, choose the right research method, and then you still have to do the research right. Mushrooms are everywhere, people. I talked about this a while back, but I still see this going really wrong. So I'm just gonna put a few reminders in here, and also for people new to the community. Very important, any type of research you do is you have to ask the right people. Goes for surveys, goes for interviews, goes for user testing. I know sometimes people say, you know, if it doesn't matter if you user test with 5 random people, it's better than not user testing at all. Yes, and also no, because if you're doing user testing for cloud software, good luck to doing any type of meaningful user testing with me. I am not into cloud software. I am not your target audience for that. So having the right people in, people who actually care about what you're trying to tell them or what you're trying to sell them, is super important. Will your mother be able to tell you something interesting? Yes, of course, but she probably also likes you. So she won't be completely honest, maybe. So I would shy away from user testing with friends and family, people from the company themselves. I also heard, and this was a great one. I heard say, could we not use salespeople as proxy users? Proxy users. Why do we need proxy users? You have real actual users. Let's go talk to them. A lot of companies are still very afraid of talking to people. There is no danger here. Those people are not the mushrooms, trust me. So don't do user research with these people. You have to also ask the right questions. And asking the right questions, of course, means don't ask leading questions. And this all sounds, you're probably going to go like, yeah, we know all this. I trust that you know all this, but I don't know who else sets up these surveys, because I see a lot of this stuff going wrong the whole time. A simple question, something like this, you know, how good would you say TLC is? That's actually, I mean, it's really good, but this is a leading question because it has one adjective in there, and it's a positive adjective. It's basically telling your users, it's telling the people that you're sending this survey to, we know it's good. You just need to tell us how good. You're skewing them towards the positive. So if you have an adjective in your question, you should always have 2. You should have the positive and the negative. How good or bad would you say TLC is? Or leave out anything that has a positive or negative connotation and have a neutral verb. Like, how would you rate TLC? Rate is very neutral. Not how much do you love TLC, not neutral. Also a verb, not neutral. Neutral verb. Don't ask loaded questions. A loaded question is, I would say it's a variation on a leading question. It doesn't in itself hold the desired answer, but it has a sort of quantifier that also biases you. Like, how do you rate top data and CRO community TLC? Okay, so I've just told you they are a top thing. That's like, how would you rate best-selling author Bubba Bob's new book? Oh, okay. Oh, he's a best-selling author. You know, who am I? I'm just a reader, so I'm just gonna, I don't know, 4. No. By saying things like that, by introducing basically adjectives. Be very careful with adjectives in survey.
Did Els freeze for anybody else or just me? Everybody? Okay. Hold, please. Els? Okay, you're back.
Oh.
You froze for a second.
Oh, okay. Undoubtedly in a very unflattering pose, because that is what I do best when I freeze.
No, it was excellent. It was a prayer pose.
Oh, wow.
You were saying adjectives were bad, which we all agreed with.
Oh, that is great. Adjectives are bad. And I said, unless, of course, you want to skew the results in your favor, but I hope that's not something that we as a community do. I always say surveys or any data that you're gathering, you're not there to gather pretty numbers or, you know, stuff to make you look good. We are doing this to find out, to come as close to the truth as we possibly can. That is what we're trying to do. And so trying to get a positive answer from your survey, or trying to skew your survey in a certain way is just really not the way to go. Another mistake you can't make when you do user research is ask people about the future. And this is something that people very often come to me, qualitative research person, for else, because data can't help them with that. So they want me to help them with that. I can't help them with that. Fortune tellers aren't real. I hope there's nobody in this audience that actually believes fortune tellers aren't real. They are not. They can't tell the future. Nobody can tell the future, So don't ask about that. Don't ask people to predict their future behavior. If there's anything you want to know about future behavior, look at past behavior. If you want to know how often I will be heading to the gym last week, ask me how often I went to the gym last week. That is where the truth lies, in past behavior, not in what people say they will do. People are extremely bad at predicting their own behavior. Also, a mistake I very often see made is when you ask people about the too distant past. And this is a tricky one because I think we all want people to be able to remember back a little bit further than they actually can. Because, I'm going to challenge you and think if you're not a very sort of like a regimented sort of person, a lot of people probably don't even remember straight off the top of their head what they had for breakfast this morning. That requires some thought for a lot of people. And so asking people how they found the sign-up process, not immediately after they actually signed up, is a very dangerous thing to do. I was sent a survey by some very interesting people about an event I attended last summer. Everybody knows who this is, right? TLC community, come on. This is your chance to redeem yourself with the
Tony Hawk.
Yay! Thank you, Tony Hawk. Yes. I know this dates me. My godson is a huge fan of my godson is a huge fan of Tony Hawk. And so when Tony Hawk came to Belgium with his show, An Evening with Tony Hawk, I had to get tickets. Got tickets.
He's never broken a bone.
Oh man. Oh
unless
yeah. Oh,
it counts.
Oh, he has broken so many bones. Actually, when we went and saw him, he could not do an ollie because his leg was still, completely wrecked, basically. So anyway, we went to An Evening with Tony Hawk, had an absolutely smashing time, my godson and me. And then I got sent a survey a while after.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm assuming you don't speak Dutch, I have translated this. It was sent by the venue and it said, how satisfied were you about? And then the online booking process from A to Z in general, the ease of use of the online booking system, the speed of the online booking system, and the clarity of the online booking system. These people wanted to get very specific with me. Guess how long after I had made the booking was I sent this survey? Shout it out. Go nuts.
Minutes.
3 weeks.
Oh, Tim, bless your cotton socks. 3 weeks. No, God, no. No. I counted the days. Yeah, I know. 237 days ago. Because the event was in August, but I booked the tickets months before. It's Tony Hawk. This shit sold out immediately. I was sent the survey, I think it was end of September. It was just nuts. How are you expected to remember? Who remembers an online booking they made 237 days ago? Nobody. You might as well have asked me to think back to the time when dinosaurs walked the earth. I wasn't there then, but it is way too long. Minutes would be the right thing to do, Callie, exactly. And even then, asking me about the speed, asking me about the
Trust it. No,
clarity.
it was super annoying.
Oh my God. You know, how would you rate all of these aspects really in particular, and then the A to Z, and then on a Likert scale? Whoa, 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 no. They asked me something else. I'll translate again. They sent me a service email before the event. And they asked me, did you find the service email useful? And these were my answering options. Yes, it was useful information. Wasn't really useful. I didn't read it. I didn't get the email. My answer is not in here. What would my answer be? I don't remember. I don't remember. Exactly. I don't remember is my answer. But they did not give me that option. They forced me to lie to them. This is what you do when you don't leave the door open. Even with closed survey questions, you should always leave the door open. Always add other and an open type-in field. Will that make, digesting this data harder? Yes. Hello, ChatGPT, but don't only trust AI. Also have there is so much value in going over these answers, manually, just reading them through, because then you will also really understand what people are telling you. So yes, I like automation, but also there is definite value in actually doing things by yourself. So add the other and an open type-in field, both for single select and multi-select questions, and even for yes or no questions. And even when you think this is a clear yes or no question, always add the option, I'm not sure. And I prefer, personally, I'm not sure to I don't know, because there's a group of people that don't like to say that they don't know stuff. I don't know, for some people, is harder. Oh, I'm sorry. I was.
You were just coughing? Yeah.
I was just coughing. I mean, if somebody, feels like if the shoe fits, that's all I'll say. But I'm not sure. Just makes it easier for everybody to admit to something. Actually, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. Sounds harsher. So I'm not sure. It's the softer version. I call this always having an open answer or an option for an open answer to a closed question, basically giving people a chance to tell you the truth. Because it is, as I said, surveys are hard. And sometimes you do a survey and it's only after the answers come in that you're like, oh, they've interpreted in such and such a way. We will need to run it again because the way we meant this question is not at all how they meant this question. And that's fine. As long as you're willing to learn from this, take the next step. Still happens to me because you can't predict everything. Another thing that I would say, be very, very, very careful when using closed questions anyway. This is an example of a survey that we did for a client in the tourist industry. They had an app, and this is Belgium, so you will all see names that mean very little to you. I'm very happy about that. And they had an app, and they were wondering, like, we don't really feel like it's doing very well. Is it worthwhile to continue to use this app? And they wanted to also know what is, how well known is this app with people planning a day out in Belgium. And they said, we want to ask this question, and then we want to give people a list of apps that they can, select, and our app will be in there. And I said, I really don't want to do that. Because if you ask a question like that and you give people a list of things, just check boxes, there is nothing easier to do than tick a checkbox. And people don't actually realize that they're lying. And so I said, if you want to ask this question the way you want to ask it, we'll do that for you. I don't want I don't like it, and I reserve the right to add a non-existing app. And I will come up with a name for this app. And so I did. And I'm good at coming up with apps that don't exist. I mean, I looked it up. The app doesn't exist. The website doesn't exist. The black rectangle is the name of the app of my client. Nobody had ever heard or used that. They had heard and had used my app, which does not exist. Look, do you now understand? Do you understand the mushrooms? How dangerous is this? Because if you don't do that, if you don't have a sort of decoy, and to be fair, this is a very catchy, not in English, but in Dutch, this is a very catchy name. But the thing is, none of this is now trustworthy. And because this is not a trustworthy way to ask this question, you should have asked it first as an open question. As an open question to see, what do people spontaneously type in? And then afterwards, to quantify, you could use a closed question, but first you should have started off with an open question. This stuff is really scary. And this is why also you need to pick your researchers carefully, because again, a lot of people think that user research is something that, oh, surely else. If you come and talk to us about this for a day, we'll know what to do, right? Well, you'll know the very fundamentals, yes, but it takes skill, it takes practice. So if you're doing it in-house, please don't ask the intern. I see this happening all the time. Oh yeah, what are you saying? We need to run a survey? Yeah, we got some interns coming in for the summer. We'll have them set up the surveys. You may have them set up the surveys in the tool, but don't make them responsible for the questions. That is a super important part of the research, and even setting it up in the tool can be more complicated than you think. Experience matters here. If you're outsourcing research, you have to sort of, I would say, look for a culture fit as well, because I'm not the best placed person to do research for you in China. I have no idea about the Chinese market. I have no idea about Chinese culture. I have no idea how to phrase a question. I have no idea what the pitfalls are there. So not good at all. If you're doing interviews or user testing, depends again on your audience, and if you have, if you're using a plugin and you're speaking to, and your website is in English, but your audience is super international, then you don't have to have like a native English speaker to also speak with customers of your plugin, because they will also be based in India and Spain and Ireland and the Netherlands. But if you're doing interviews, user testing with an app or a site that is in Swedish, it's best to have a native or near native Swedish speaker to really, because very often it comes down to very much nuance in the wording. And you have to have somebody who's really attuned to that. Just saying like, I can speak a few words, or I'm semi-fluent, doesn't cut it. You have to have native or near native speakers. This is all with basically, doing the research right. This as well, you have to put your biases aside. And this is extremely, extremely hard to do. And I used to say, be neutral. Impossible, actually. You can't be neutral. Nobody's neutral. You might want to be neutral, but you're not. You have to be aware of your biases. I think that's the best we all can hope for, to be aware of our biases so we can catch ourselves. And there are some things that you can do to sort of keep your biases in check, and that is, don't overinvest beforehand, neither emotionally nor financially. if people come to me and they go like, yeah, we've been working on this prototype for 6 months and everybody's really psyched about it, da 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 da. Then you do the user testing. I'm like, oh man, this is not going to be fun, because they are so happy with it already. They've invested so much money in it already. Their minds are a little bit closed off. Their minds are a little bit closed off to, whatever might come out of the research. And I see this, you often see this beforehand as well. There's a lot of, people get very finicky about your particular test user profile. Yes, but I see now that we actually wanted people with a minimum employee size of 5, and you've got somebody here that only has 4 employees. Well, that is just going to skew the, no, that's not what it's about. So don't overinvest beforehand. Also, don't cherry pick data that confirms your assumptions. I think I saw this recently as well. Let's do an A/B test and just track everything we can possibly track to then sort of like see which bits we can take to confirm our assumptions. This happens in user research, qualitative user research as well. Yes, but there was this one person that said that they really, really thought it was very interesting that we had feature X, Y, or Z. Yeah, 1 out of 10, which means no, not interesting. Don't overinterpret data. Don't go looking for that stuff that you want to see confirmed. It's very, very tempting to do, and you should really fight that urge. What you should do is actively try to find data that goes against your bias. Again, not easy. I always think it's really interesting to collaborate with somebody who isn't as invested perhaps as you are, who doesn't share your bias, who doesn't share your interest, to really, to make sure that your data is clean. If you do research and you don't document, it's like if a tree, falls down in the forest and there was nobody around. So documentation, I think, is a huge part of also, and a big sign of how mature an organization is. Documentation takes time, again, and it's and for a lot of companies that in and of itself is a challenge, and I have full compassion and respect for that. Having said that, I often see research either go undocumented or over documented, and both things are bad. Because if you don't document it, not great, because for right now you might know the next steps, but if this is one of your business critical things, this is research into one of your KPIs, it's really, really handy to be able to look back and see, like, we did this, didn't we do this? Didn't we do a survey like this already last year? What are the differences between the data? So if you don't document, you'll never have a history. It's not like in analytics, if you set it up right, you have that automatically. You have to work a lot harder to document your findings from qualitative research. If you over document, it's also not great. I sometimes see, and I've made this mistake as a beginning user researcher, document everything, create these massive documents. And I mean, some companies require them, and for good reason, but very often it's just too much and nobody looks at it again. So what you always have to do is have a minimal report, like, what did you do? What are the most important learnings? And also, what are the next steps? What are the next steps? Why did we do this research? We did this for a reason. What are we going to do with it now? This also keeps everyone engaged and get everyone involved with this. And so I would think the last thing, my last tip, also for qualitative research, is don't rely on old data. Nobody in their right mind would have a look, would think to go look at analytics data from 2 years ago to say something about the present. it's good to have it for referral. But yeah, it's not because you did a survey 2 years ago that that data is still valid now. Your company may still be the same, but that's not an excuse. The market may have changed. Your competitors may have changed. Your customers may have changed. So it's not like that, yeah, we're still doing the same old thing. Surely, just because we haven't changed, nothing else has changed. No, make sure when you make decisions that you base yourself on accurate and current data. That's a lot of bad stuff, right? But also a lot of ways to do it right. But I couldn't call it talk the good, the bad, and the ugly without the ugly. So still got some ugly to go. It's only a little bit of ugly. And it's probably, I think it's a lot worse than any of the bad stuff that we talked about. And that is a resistance to research. I said it earlier, I still have come across companies who simply will not allow me to speak to their customers. I can do surveys, but I can't do interviews because they are afraid. We don't want to bother our customers. It's very often the sort of excuse, and I can't help but wonder, is that all there is, or do you not want to find out because it might disprove something that you have believed for a very long time? This is often the case, especially in traditional companies with traditional people in, marketing roles, because growth as a role is not that old. They have held beliefs and they have made decisions for a long time on not so much data. And then all of a sudden you come there and question that or disprove that. That's why I say research requires courage. I mean, I've got a lot of opinions. And if research proves me wrong, then I have to adjust those opinions. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with adjusting your opinions. It requires humility and it requires an open mind. And also, don't believe everything you see on a slide, you'll see a critical one. That's all from me. Happy to hear you.
There are several questions that were posted in the TLC calls channel. I may not be able to get all of them in the next 3 minutes, but you are in the TLC calls channel. So I'm going to try to get to a couple of them, and then we can continue the conversation on the TLC calls channel afterwards. But let's see. First question. Yes, it's not about the tool. This is from Merritt Aho, but doesn't the panel quality vary dramatically between tools if you're doing a moderated usability study?
Yeah, well, I am actually not yes, this is true, Merritt. And two, I'm actually not the biggest fan of unmoderated usability user testing. It was not on there. I often say it's the non-missing link between user session recordings and moderated user testing. And, this is a bit of a lie. I see its value, but more in terms of marketing and copy than for usability and functionality issues. I find the fact that you cannot ask a question and not probe deeper for usability issues and functionality, I find that really limiting. I think it's great if you want to see how people interact with like a landing page and to have their view on messaging and proposition. I think then unmoderated, great. But for functionality, usability, no. And even for like I like to do my own recruitment and recruiting the right users. And yeah, it's so definitely true. Getting the right people in is super important. And on those tools and in those panels, and this is also my caveat for in-house user panels, while they can be great for some things, you have to be a little bit careful that you're not cultivating what I call semi-professional testers.
Yep.
If people start,
because they become experts.
Yeah, they become experts, or and they if you're not, if your target audience is not designers and somebody says font size, I'm already like, what the fuck? Font is not a normal word for you to know, normal person.
Or
No.
masking.
Yeah, that's if somebody calls pink magenta, you know you're in trouble. That's a designer. That's yeah. So it's tricky. Yeah, it's tricky. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we're at time. There are about 4 more questions over in the TLC calls channel.
Okay.
If we can continue the conversation over there. Els, you are amazing as always. Reminder, everybody, July 7th, Lucia will be here and we'll be talking about optimizing blogs and content, which is first time that we're going to be talking about that on the TLC. So see you all in July. And we're currently planning our next conversation. So see you all soon. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Els.
Thank you very much. See you all soon. Bye-bye.